It was a chilly evening, and Officer Mark Thompson was patrolling the quiet streets of Willow Brook. The town was known for its peace, but something about that night felt off. As he drove past the park, his headlights caught a glimpse of a little girl, no older than 6, standing alone under a flickering streetlight. Her tiny frame was shivering, and her eyes were wide with fear. Before Mark could step out of his car, a woman rushed out of the shadows, grabbed the girl's hand, and started dragging her away. But just as they were about to disappear into the darkness, the girl turned her head, locked eyes with Mark, and whispered 4 words that sent a chill down his spine. "She's not my mom." Mark's training kicked in immediately. He radioed for backup, his voice steady but urgent. "This is Officer Thompson. I need assistance at Maple Park. Possible child abduction in progress." He stepped out of his car, his hand resting on his holster, and called out to the woman. "Ma'am, stop right there." The woman froze, her grip tightening on the girl's wrist. She turned around, her face a mask of calm, but her eyes darted nervously. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, her voice too sweet, too rehearsed. The little girl's lips trembled, but she stayed silent, her eyes pleading with Mark to do something. Mark's mind raced. He had been a cop for over a decade, but nothing had prepared him for this. He remembered the missing child reports that had been circulating lately. 3 kids in the past month, all under the age of 8, all vanished without a trace. The department had been on edge, but they had no leads, no suspects. Until now. Mark took a step closer, his eyes never leaving the girl. She was dressed in a pink jacket, her hair in messy braids, and her shoes were scuffed, as if she had been walking for miles. The woman, on the other hand, was impeccably dressed, her nails perfectly manicured, her demeanor too polished for someone out for a late-night stroll with a child. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification," Mark said, his tone firm but polite. The woman hesitated, then reached into her purse, pulling out a driver's license. "Here you go, officer," she said, handing it over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mark glanced at the license. It was issued to a Sarah Johnson, age 32, from the next town over. But something about it felt off. The photo didn't quite match the woman in front of him, and the expiration date was smudged. Before he could question her further, the little girl suddenly yanked her hand free and ran toward Mark, tears streaming down her face. "Please help me," she cried. The woman's calm facade shattered. "Emily, stop this nonsense," she snapped, lunging for the girl. Mark instinctively stepped between them, shielding the girl with his body. "Ma'am, step back," he ordered, his hand now firmly on his weapon. The woman's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Mark thought she might attack him. But then, she took a deep breath and forced another smile. "Officer, this is just a misunderstanding. Emily is my daughter, and she's been acting out lately. You know how kids can be." Mark glanced down at the girl, who was clutching his leg, her tiny body trembling. "Is that true?" he asked gently. The girl shook her head violently. "No." "She's lying. She took me from the park yesterday. I want my mommy." Mark's heart sank. He knew he couldn't let this woman leave, not until he had answers. Just then, the sound of sirens filled the air. Backup had arrived. 2 more patrol cars pulled up, and officers quickly surrounded the scene. The woman's face turned pale, and she started backing away. "This is ridiculous. I'm leaving," she shouted. But the officers blocked her path. Mark knelt down to the girl's level. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked softly. "Emily," she whispered. "Emily, do you know your mommy's phone number?" The girl nodded and recited a number, which Mark immediately called. A frantic voice answered on the first ring. "Hello? Who is this?" Mark identified himself and explained the situation. The woman on the other end burst into tears. "Oh, thank God. Emily's been missing since yesterday. We've been searching everywhere." Within minutes, Emily's parents arrived at the scene, their faces a mix of relief and anguish. They hugged their daughter tightly, tears streaming down their faces. The woman who had claimed to be Emily's mother was arrested on the spot. As it turned out, she was part of a human trafficking ring that had been targeting children in the area. Thanks to Emily's bravery and Mark's quick thinking, the ring was eventually dismantled, and all the missing children were safely returned to their families. That night, as Mark drove back to the station, he couldn't help but think about those 4 little words that had changed everything. "She's not my mom." They were a reminder that sometimes the smallest voices can carry the most important messages.